Well, my name is Salma Abbasi, and I'm a member of the Sprite network. And I've been working in the technology sector for about 45 years, and currently working as a professor in several universities in the global south on ethical AI and AI for the SDGs. And I've been an advocate for online safety for 30 years, working with the various UN organizations on child online protection and using technology for good. Putting that all in context, it'll sort of give you a little bit of idea why we have started this initiative. Um, Working with the IEEE since 2019, we've been working on the ethically aligned design guidelines for AI, and lots of things were uncovered in this conversation, which led me to believe that there's all this hype and lack of consideration of the impact to society, particularly to children and vulnerable groups. So when we had International Women's Day on the 8th of March, I got together with my team and I said, look, there's something meaningful that I want to do in this bigger picture. And so we kicked off a roundtable with women that I work with, professional women in AI and cyber and risk. And so this program was launched on the 8th of March through a roundtable. I've shared with Mark the concept note for this, and it's completely homegrown by like-minded women who care and worry and recognize this to be an issue. So this presentation is what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 months. And I'm now going to ask Mark to please switch to the next slide. Sorry to ask you to do this, Mark. Okay, so I have as an engineer, I like things to be very structured and organized. So I've put an agenda together with 10 points. I'm going to move through some of them fairly quickly. I know I have 30 minutes for the lecture and 10 minutes for Q&A. So I wanted to set the stage and talk about the societal implications of technology, the way it is today, if we don't put the right guardrails and accountability frameworks in place, and then present some stats and facts that are not made by me. They're from authentic sources, WHO or Ofcom and other reputable organizations, and then move into what is the strategic implications of these issues and really talk about our priorities. Now, we want to do a lot, but we had to focus on a few things and identified 5 key objectives that we'll walk you through. And then the current activities and deliverables that we're working on that would be presented at some key milestones of the global UN stages. And then just touch on some key takeaways for consideration and action by all of us like-minded people that are on this call. And then a call for action, and then move into the interactive Q&A session for your thoughts. So next slide, please. Mark, could we? Yeah, thank you. So what we have here is the team that we're working with. These are women from all over the world. On the left-hand side are some of the key players, strategic thinkers with me. I think one person you may know is Professor Keely Crockett, who's actually from Manchester University, and we're on a few other panels together. And Sarah Pinnock, who is working for the Home Office in Luton as a Prevent coordinator. And Dr. Alexandra Salah, who is from Shutterstock, but we've worked together for the last 30 years in Lucent Technology, and she's also a professor of AI. And on the right-hand side are some of our colleagues who share the concerns are working with online safety. Thank you. Next slide. So to set the stage, I do not like or expect you to read all of this English that is there. But in summary, the issue is that artificial intelligence is everywhere. It's influencing every single thing that we do today, including our democratic process, our defense capabilities, and the way the societies are glued together. However, it's mainly controlled by men. This is an issue that I have. Even if I wasn't a woman, I would have this issue. And the reason why is there's unintentional and intentional biases that is in the design and in the way revenue. You just have to look at a few statements made by Elon Musk or Sam Altman, other various players around the world in this tech space, and see that there is an imbalance. This was a very important topic that was raised during Davos as well, where not just the geopolitical situation, but the fact that this field is dominated by men, And their focus is, in a very simple terms, revenue generation at any cost. That's a general statement. The second paragraph, I'm really talking about the weaponization. Now, this is another sensitive topic, but the weaponization of AI, you have seen it in action. Some of the news channels, non-English news channels, are covering how it's being used with pretty much American tech in defense, using sensor technology and AI in a very malicious way, which many folks in Geneva are deadly against, and know that there's surveillance issues, privacy issues, and human dignity and life issues at stake. But without having collective action and governance accountability with consequences, we won't be able to make success. And this is kind of the foundation of where I'm coming from, setting the stage. The next slide, please. So, in simple terms, what does it mean? If I was to synthesize this, I'd put 8 points here. Social implications. So, we've seen the misuse of information when we had the Southport stabbing. And I'm saying this as a British Muslim, the polarization of society, the fragmentation of society. I'm sure you've all seen the elections and the huge sweeping win of the party with Nigel Farage, and what a fantastic leader he was when we had Brexit, and what a success that has been. So if we look at the rising misogyny, then after this, the next few slides will show the data, but the increase in global technology facilitated gender-based violence, which the UN Women publish on a regular basis, and UNICRI, the UN agency looking at research in this area, also publish papers in this, and the gender-based hostility that exists online and offline. We work with the Bedfordshire Police, and I think the Home Office has also recognized that there is a serious issue that we have to address as multi-stakeholders in this space. Number 3 is the escalation of misinformation, disinformation. Again, it's prevalent in all the medias that we use. The manipulation of young minds and vulnerable minds through the digital influence. And this is probably one of the things that we're concerned about the most. Then number 5, the spread of deep fake, the deception, the increase of sexualization and exploitation of women and girls in all shapes and forms. And then the radicalization, extremist views and behaviors and attitude, which is being driven by, whether you call it the social media influencers or the toxic games, etc. We'll go into this. One of the new phenomena in the context of extremism is the deep fascination to extreme violence. The Home Office is currently making a new policy to define what does that actually mean, but it's an important thing for us to remember and watch as we see and experience our younger let's say nieces and nephews and children engaging with technology. That psychological awareness is important for us. The fact that social media companies and AI, whether you look at Grok or you look at, I'm going to get deeper into this in the next slide. I'll hold myself. Mark, if you could present the next slide, please. Thank you. So I have 10 cases. I could go on forever, but I will just talk about a snapshot of 10 cases that are these are aspects, alarming facts of why we're really worried about this problem. And I'll start with youth suicide. Some of the stats here will show you the increase in suicide rates. Last year at the AI for Good Summit, I published a paper on the hidden public health crises of social media and toxic games in the development of psychological and physiological well-being of children. And those are the cases that are open source from Instagram, from Facebook, which courts in California have been arguing. And I'm happy to say that there's been great progress to recognize the damage and danger in this area. But this factor, 34% of university students have reported thoughts of suicide. For whatever the reasons are, these are concerning facts. The second is self-harm in young people. We work very closely in Luton, and we have mothers' networks in which you'll be surprised of the increase in self-harm that young girls are doing in particular, because they don't look a certain way. They're bombarded with images, actually artificially generated or filtered images, which they feel they can never attain. And therefore, I want to kill myself. So it's a hard fact. Number three is the online child sexual exploitation. Um, this is an area that we've been working with several agencies, Ofcom and the government, on child sexual exploitation images, CSAM, some images that are absolutely ridiculous. There's a billion-dollar industry running in this space, which you can't imagine why and how. Um, and then the 92% of self-generated content by girls, 11 to 13. I mean, there has to be something wrong here with our values and our drivers. I'm sure many of you are aware of OnlyFans website encouraging this kind of activity as a business. What is it doing to the moral compass of our societies? And Grok and the AI nudification apps that hosted by Apple and by Google. I mean, where does it stop? Number four, misogyny and the manosphere. During the International Girls ICT Day a couple of weeks ago, we ran some focus groups in London with teenagers, secondary school girls. And we were obviously, as a technologist, I want them to get involved in the AI and the ICT digital industry because of the opportunities and how it cuts in every sector. Would you believe that one of the most important points the girls said to me was, Madam, it's really difficult to work in a tech company because of the sexual harassment and because of the manosphere. And I said, tell me more about the manosphere. Now, in 1980, when I was designing ASIC chips, I can assure you that there were really one or two ladies, and that was about it in Silicon Valley when I worked for AMD. They said that, well, you can see this movie on Netflix, and we talk to our friends and we understand that there's a bias. We won't get our job. They're just going to keep us as a token. We won't be able to influence. And that nobody funds women-led technology. So why should we join? They were very alarming and concerning points that they were all raising about what their views were. If we want to get young women involved in STEM and technology, AI, to address the gaps, we have to look at the environment that is pushing them there, the fear of that culture and behavior, where smart young girls are not taking jobs in technology. They're concerned about the environment and the bias that would be there. Next slide, please, Mark. So another four, internet addiction. In 2010, I was working with presenting at the UN WSIS, the World Summit on Information Society, about internet addiction in collaboration with UNESCO. And those numbers have gone terribly wrong 16 years on. I mean, can you imagine? I can't believe it was 16 years ago. Oh my goodness. 36% struggle to control themselves online. This is by WHO. I'm arguing, lobbying is a better word, with WHO to declare new digital diseases with consequences and hold companies accountable, duty of care. But again, we're battling the issue of revenue and transparency, but the numbers are there. Youth mental health. If we talk about, again, the paper we wrote on hidden public health crisis, it really is about mental disorder. The fact that we don't have enough professionals to actually address the growing issue and need in the country. Post-pandemic, this has skyrocketed, as you can imagine, because everybody lived online. Nobody really, not nobody, a few present negative images online. It's always how fantastic my life is. Come to Dubai, you'll be driving a Ferrari and you'll have a sexy lady on your arm. This is the current, well, the war has changed this. Recognize that my office is in Dubai, so I do have a little bit of a reality check here. But that's the image that was portrayed that made many young people leave England and go in search of paradise, and young girls. Then the screen time impact on speech and delay. Currently, we published a paper, I think about 4 months ago, on the psychosis of the online space on child mental development and actually development, the physical and the psychological. There's a lot of statistics out there, and there's a lot of pushback to address the issue of how increased screen time, the phenomenon of children being given, I call my phone the dangerous digital babysitter. In Dubai, you see in the mall, maybe a 2 or 3 year old with a big iPad, the latest Apple iPad, flicking the screens and being able to actually be contained by the bright colors and the fast moving objects, which definitely has a negative impact on them. The eighth is a technology facilitated gender-based violence, which I think we can all agree that when you look at the toxic games, which is my next bullet, we can see that this is an experience. WHO and UN Women have been documenting this for for the last 5 years for sure. And at the Internet Governance Forum 3 years ago, we were discussing how to address the issue of technology facilitated gender-based violence, as some of the legal frameworks and the legal frameworks don't exist to be able to call a virtual game actually having inflicted a physical crime on a person when the woman will feel violated. Interesting. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the last slide on the 10 factors I wanted to discuss, but this is the toxic games and misogyny that exist on the games. Now, I don't know how it could be called games. 70% of girls between 13 and 17, which are young impressionable ages, sexist content online in the games. A lot of the games also provide scenarios for crime and for radical extremist actions. We've written a paper to the Home Office identifying the top games, been researching the experience with lived experience of young people, how hostile they feel. That is this really entertainment? And should this be allowed? Obviously, there's a big debate on you can have the right to whatever you wish and it's entertainment. We need to stop children from accessing these games, but these things aren't real. It's difficult to stop. In 2023, we launched a program with the IEEE to create terms and conditions in collaboration with young secondary school and university students, because nobody was reading the terms and conditions of Instagram, Snapchat. They're too complicated. Unfortunately, they remained as guidelines and not a global standard, because the different legislation with Estonia and Australia being at different stages of maturity. But these things are really important for us to understand. And then the last point is the early exposure to violent porn. This is having a devastating impact on relationships between young boys and girls, which needs to be addressed. So this is my justification of why we started this. I mean, there's a lot more to say, but you have to recognize that when you compile all of these 10 points that I've made, it comes to a serious concern that we need to reflect on our society and identify where is the responsibility going to lie. Next slide, please. So the strategic imperative, and AI's monopolized technology supremacy, it's driven from the US mainly. And there's fundamental bias that is built in there based on the designers and other drivers for the investment, return of their investment. Number two, autonomous systems deployed without sufficient accountability, human oversight, or maturity. As a person who worked in the technology development sector for decades, we had various stages of, the beta testing, limited control release, etc., where we were able to do some corrective actions before you had a general release. That doesn't happen with AI. It's as quick as possible. We must push it out there. Number three, smaller nations and marginalized communities are becoming passive recipients. My teaching is mainly in the global south, with the exception of Korea and the UAE. But don't they have the opportunity to determine and design their future? Shouldn't they? And then number four, the right to life and dignity and equitable participation in the future. This is critical. It's being undermined as we stand today, and this is important to address. And then lastly, number five, women and girls are being denigrated and marginalized by this online digital space for many, many dimensions I've just covered. Next slide, please. So we understand and acknowledge that AI governance is inseparable from these issues. We need to have global equity, peace and security. Technology should be for good. It shouldn't be there to exploit and make more sophisticated cyber crimes. We're currently researching the post-quantum. What the hell is that going to do to cybersecurity and resilience? A very interesting topic for another day. Human rights and protection of our dignity. We should not be persecuted and targeted and then killed with technology. That's really unfair and inhumane. And then the prevention of autonomous systems operating beyond meaningful human control. The triple strike that we had in Iran with a Tomahawk missile, purely driven by AI, showed you an example of errors. Next slide, please. So the purpose of our mission. We want to advance human-centric AI governance accountability and address the risks of AI weaponization and autonomous systems. And when I say AI weaponization, I actually also mean weaponization of information. And then promote equity in access and deployment and regulatory influence in this space. Challenge monopoly-driven technology dominance and develop collective principles for safeguarding humanity. I would like to add human values. And in green, I put, okay, so the priorities: defending the rights to life, human dignity, and child well-being. They are innocent victims of this exploitive market. Address the weaponization risk of AI. Promoting equity. Well, you can see Anthropic and OpenAI. It's a last couple of months ago with a UN $200 million contract. Anthropic said, no, this is ethically wrong. OpenAI jumped in and said, oh, well, we'll do it. So there's an issue. Promoting equity and technological power, ensuring technology for humanity. Thank you. Next slide. So we have a very comprehensive list of things we want to do, but we said let's have 5 key objectives. Strengthen women's influence. Now I could say like-minded men, but at the moment I'm focusing on the ladies. Strengthening women's influence in AI, security, and governance. This is important because statistics will show you that women aren't on the table, the diversity in views are not being kept. Elevate women leaders in AI, safety, ethics, cybersecurity, and defense policies. A core governance discussion. They need to be at the table. Professor Keeley is working with NATO and is on the table, one of very few ladies. Number 2, address the weaponization risk. If we have revenue versus risk to humanity, risk to the international laws, somebody has to stop that. You can see that the genocide is unable to be stopped because people refuse to call it genocide. Whatever bulldozing activities have happened in Palestine, it's now creeping up to Lebanon. There is no stop of technology. So we are in an uncontrolled, uncontained space today, which is why it becomes important for us to be able to examine the ethical and legal geopolitical implications of the running out of control technology. AI-enabled warfare, I've mentioned earlier. Number 3, promote equity in technology, the technological powers. This was a very important topic discussed in Geneva at the in Davos, and I'm happy to say that I was invited to the Swiss House discussion on the geopolitical imbalance. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, Stanford University identified Switzerland as #1 in the AI index. And I'm so happy about that because they've got the right values in place at the moment in the way they think. Ensuring fairness and access of infrastructure and computers, data, and of course, quantum is going to make this even more important. Next slide, please. So defend the rights for life and human dignity. Anchor AI governance in universal human rights principles. But if we can't manage the human rights principles now, oh my goodness, we need something. And then develop actionable recommendations. So we're trying to make some specific recommendations. We've drafted them. We're now socializing them with a larger group of people to be presented at the Global Regulatory AI Symposium for Regulators later this month, and at the AI for Good Summit in July. Next slide, please. So what are we currently doing? We are currently developing a draft declaration for AI governance and peace. It's in its draft form. It's going through a review process. And number 2, we're researching and developing holistic policy recommendations to address the impact of AI on children's health, safety, and their development. Also in progress, should be ready to share with a larger group of people at the end of this month. And conducting peer-to-peer research with young people. I love children researching children, and I mean teenagers, university students and secondary school. At the moment, we have a network in 10 countries, and they're assessing the lived experiences through multiple choice so that we can reinforce and validate that we are making the digital code of conduct on the things that they consider important and that they're experiencing online. Next slide, please. I know the time, I'm going to go a little bit faster, just 3 more slides left. And then At the moment, the young people have actually created a draft framework for a digital code of conduct, which is how do we behave with each other? How would we like to be treated? And that is going to be synthesized with the research after the 18th of May so that we've got something that is backed by the evidence. We will then be presenting that draft to this group of the ladies on this task force, and then to the UN before it then gets presented by the young people during the AI for Good Summit in July. Number 5, we're researching and developing principles for meaningful human oversight on autonomous and AI-driven systems. That is also currently drafted. I think it has 28 points to it. And the last point, number 6, we're currently looking for Mark to help. We want to research and examine and uncover the correlation between internet addiction and physical addiction, but we're currently seeking for funding, so we haven't started number 6. Next slide. This is the takeaway for consideration for all of us that are on this call and think this is an important discussion. Embedding human dignity across the life cycle of AI is essential. Number 2, increasing the awareness of the growing concerns around AI-enabled scams targeting a vulnerable population, and of course, particularly the elderly. It's growing exponentially. And then number 3, the urgent need to equip parents and caregivers with the awareness of the tools to mitigate any emerging AI risks. As a technologist, I am not saying technology is bad. I'm saying we have to be careful. We have to be armed with the right necessary skills to critical thinking and et cetera, other things. And number 4, the rising misuse of nudification. This really irritates me. The technologies in sexual exploitation and abuse requires collective action to prevent, protect, and prosecute. Keyword prosecute. If you don't get your hand slapped, you will keep sticking your fingers in the fire unless you realize that burning really hurts. There is no impact if there is no consequences. And lastly, urgent need to simplify and strengthen the reporting mechanisms. At the moment, people are flabbergasted. They don't know where to go. Ofcom sometimes is user unfriendly. Improve the coordination for the support agencies. The handoffs have big gaps. Southport killing, the stabbing in Loot that we just had in Golders Green. The guy was known 2008. He stabbed a policeman and the dog. He has mental health issues. How did he fall out of the system? This is where technology could help us find him and follow through, not let him just run wild on the streets. One example. And then establish clear pathways for victims to recover. I will use the word survivors, but victims makes it very clear, and get justice. It's a very difficult process to convict people who've done any form of sexual harassment. And then lastly, and probably more importantly, enforce a duty of care on these tech companies and applications for accountability with consequences. This needs to happen by and only through our collaboration together. Last slide, call for action. Thank you very much, Mark. So we collectively invite you to join hands with us on the same mission, sharing your knowledge and passion and advocacy and what I've just mentioned, if you think this is important. And this initiative is completely funded by my retirement fund because I believe it's important and it's urgent to address. I can't wait to see the next Molly Russell. I don't want to see that happen. And if you share the conviction, we would love your support to help co-fund this and amplify the work that we're doing so we can have a bigger, faster impact on our work. Next slide.